Diddy had testified to. It helps to describe and back up and corroborate with what Cassandra Ventura had testified to. All this idea that the jury has to believe that Sean Combs was essentially a mob boss, that he was running this criminal organization and had people, engaging in this kind of behavior. And I'll pick it up back to you because the sound stopped. But, also real quick, she talked about her work. And she talked about being forced. I mean, if we're talking about forced labor, it wasn't just the hours. I mean, she talked about the hours she had to work as well, but also the kind of circumstances of her job too, right?
She did, and as I'm trying to go through my notes, everyone, that's also the beauty of the live shot, is writing or finding your place where you'd wrote down everything, because you write down so many notes, I should say. But yeah, as far as just the overworking that she did, she said on a good night she got 4 hours of sleep, and then on a bad night she got 2 hours of sleep. I personally think 4 hours of sleep is kind of a bad night, but according to her, that was just pretty typical. She said that she even got stress-induced alopecia from working with Diddy. She even had to go to a doctor. She said that around that time frame she was making about $65,000 as her salary as a personal assistant. But the thing is, Jesse, she went to HR, and HR calculated Capricorn's overtime, and she said that she had enough overtime that was owed to her, totaling about $80,000 of overtime. That's a lot of money. But what did Diddy do whenever he was shown kind of this paper receipt and kind of this document that showed that she was owed $80,000 in overtime? Diddy allegedly ripped up this paper. That's what Capricorn Clark said while she was on the stand. But like a lot of the other assistants that have testified so far, including, David James and George Kaplan as well, that Capricorn Clark's one of her many duties was to set up hotel rooms. And even just thinking about this time frame, right, Jesse, it's from 2004 to 2006. So this was before the Cassie relationship that she was still required to set up these hotels. She said that she would unpack a camera box. This camera box had a camera, lube, baby oil in it. She said that she had to unpack Diddy's clothes, his shoes, a toiletry bag, which the toiletry bag was that Louis Vuitton bag that allegedly had drugs inside of it. She said there were drugs like ecstasy inside this bag. Kind of still the same old tricks, it seems like, too, from just booking these hotel stays, that if it was one of Diddy's girlfriends, because again, this was before Cassie Ventura, that the name for the girlfriend would be Jackie Starr, a same alias that was used by Cassie. She had explained that as far as the names for the hotel reservations for Diddy specifically, she said that those could be either Frank Black, they could be Frank White. She even said that during some of these hotel stays that he being Diddy would stay at the hotel with Kim Porter, and this would be something that would happen at least once a week. But there were other girlfriends who would stay at the hotel too. And then even in the aftermath of everything, Jesse, it's kind of that same old thing where she would pack up all of his stuff and clean up after him. And what was kind of on the walls and kind of the stickier stuff that's found inside these hotel rooms, it was baby oil. So it was interesting kind of hearing that even before the Cassie Ventura relationship goes, that Capricorn Clark was essentially doing the same type of responsibilities that other assistants did while Diddy was with Cassie and even after the fact.
Right. Well, listen, we have a lot to break down with her testimony and what to make of it. But Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for the in-depth report. It feels like I'm, reading the transcript. That's how detailed and thorough your reporting is on this. I know you have to jump back into the courtroom, but Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, so we're going to break this down, and we're also going to break down your questions. We see them all coming in right now. So I want to bring on my guests. I'm joined first by criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Great to have you here, Safa. And we are also joined by entertainment and employment attorney Cameron Dolachahi. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time. So a lot of questions to get into. I will start with you, Safa. We got this question that's coming in from D Princess. So Capricorn said she observed Diddy with guns. The government also has unmarked guns in evidence. What impact will this have on the RICO case, right? The racketeering conspiracy. Talk to us about this, Safa.
Going to have a significant impact on the RICO charges, because one of the things that the government has to prove is that there's an underlying predicate offense within a 10-year period to substantiate the RICO charge. The government last week had testimony with respect to the arson in Kid Cudi's vehicle, which is one of the predicate offenses that they would have to prove. Kidnapping is also another predicate offense they have to prove. So if the government can show that Mr. Combs used threats of force or physical violence by way of using a firearm, which is a significant threat of force and would cause someone to fear for their life, they can prove the kidnapping. And based on Capricorn Clark's testimony this morning, I think they're on a pretty good path to proving that.
I think the testimony, Cameron, about what the employees went through, what was required of them, even if you go back to one of these former assistants saying that it was Sean Combs' kingdom and we all did what he wanted. One of the things that she testified to is that she had to take a lie detector test. Capricorn Clark had to take a lie detector test. One of the questions is, Danny asks, why did Capricorn
Get a brand new air conditioning system installed and do not put a single penny down in the process. Guys, if you live anywhere here in the area, right now, this month, we have a special going on where we can get you a brand new high efficiency air conditioning system installed in your home for $0 down and starting at just $83 a month. If you are interested, if you'd like the details on this, you can use the camera app on your phone to scan the QR code here to my right or to my left. It's going to take you to a page with 1 or 2 quick questions, answer those, and then we will send you over more information. Again, if you are anywhere here in Pennsylvania and you've got an old, struggling air conditioning system that you've been thinking of replacing, or you just need to upgrade, right now, this month, we can get you a brand new system installed for $0 down and starting at just $83 a month. If you're interested, scan the QR code here to my right or to my left, and we will send you over more information.
Not just one person saying it, multiple people corroborating the same work environment lends absolute credence to it.
So we also get questions in from, not just on YouTube, but we get emails. And there was one that struck us last week. I got to repeat it. I'm going to go to you, Safa. This is an email question from Jamie. I've been watching Law and Crime to keep me updated on the Diddy trial. Thank you all for the information. You're welcome. I've heard people on your show and others say that the prosecution's witnesses are providing testimony to show that Cassie was forced and coerced to comply with Diddy's sex fantasy demands in order to support sex trafficking charges. There are men who sexually, physically, financially, and emotionally abuse women using force, fraud, or coercion all the time. It seems that in order for Diddy's crimes to qualify for commercial sex trafficking, someone would have needed to purchase a victim, i.e. Cassie, from Diddy for the purpose of sex acts. It seems that is why Diddy's crimes wouldn't qualify for sex trafficking, because it's not commercial that we've heard of yet. Why isn't anyone talking about that? Am I missing something? And then there's also a tagline, also, still don't understand what RICO is. So, Safa, I'll give the floor to you. Is it about purchasing Cassie for sex trafficking? And also, if you want to give a real quick 4-sentence definition about what RICO is.
So really quickly, RICO is a racketeering, influence, and corrupt organization, which essentially means that you have a criminal enterprise that engages in a pattern of behavior that would further that criminal enterprise. There's a few predicate offenses. Some of them include bribery, kidnapping, arson, other things like that. And essentially those would go to prove to further the enterprise, so to speak. So that is basically what a RICO is, first and foremost. Now, with respect to the sex trafficking charges here in the indictment, it's not that Cassie was the one that was purchased for sexual activity, but that they purchased sex workers, so to speak, in order to engage in sexual acts with Cassie, which is why the government had a number of male sex workers that testified with respect to, who they worked for, when they became engaged with Mr. Combs and Cassie Ventura, when they traveled or if they traveled from state to state, because there is a transportation and commerce component to that as well. So it's that Mr. Combs essentially purchased these sex or commercial sex workers, transported them via state lines or across state lines for the purposes of engaging in commercial sexual activity with Ms. Ventura.
Safa, I just want to follow up about one point on this. So we actually have a sidebar coming out later tonight about whether or not the prosecution at this point has proved sex trafficking. So I encourage everybody to check it out. But the reason I bring it up is one of the questions I posed there, I'm going to throw to you. Is it also commercial sex, whether or not, putting aside what was paid to these sex workers, if something of value was provided or promised to Cassandra Ventura, does that make it commercial sex? Is it only about the sex workers, or is it something of value, or whether it was gifts or trips or financial dependency or career promises? Is that commercial sex for sex trafficking?
To an extent, but more so you see it often with respect to the exchange of currency. Could gifts and things of that nature make a showing of commercial sex acts? Possibly. But again, with respect to these charges, I don't think that the government is proving exactly that Ms. Ventura was the person that was the basis for the commercial sex act, but
Right.
that these sex workers that were purchased through this company were the individuals that were or they were the commercial sex workers. So I think it's really with respect to those individuals, which I think interestingly enough begs the question of this particular company, which seems to be a legitimized company, um, you know, employing these sex workers for individuals to purchase.
I'm going to throw it over to you now, Cameron. By the way, and I correct me if I'm wrong, am I mispronouncing your name? Is it Cameron or Cameron? I keep looking and I'm wondering if I'm saying it incorrectly.
Cameron, I'm a child of Iranian immigrants, so they spelled it quite an interesting way, but it's Cameron.
Oh, there you
I
go.
appreciate
Okay,
yeah.
well, there you go, Cameron. So we got a question from Mikey John. Do you think Usher is on the witness list? He's known Diddy for a long time, even lived with him. I'm sure he must know something. And let me just couple that. Dawn Richard last week, I believe it was last week, testified that she observed Diddy punch Cassie in front of high-profile celebrities like Usher, which I have said goes to the idea of the power dynamic. So big factor for the jury to consider is why didn't Cassie leave? Why didn't she step forward? Why didn't she fight back? Why didn't she report Combs? Well, if that allegation is true and the jury accepts it, that he could beat her up in front of these people and nobody steps in, nobody does anything, that shows the power of Combs. What is she expected to do? Do you think Usher's going to be called to the stand?
Yeah, he absolutely could be. That's a great point. His testimony is absolutely relevant to show the domestic abuse, to show the forced nature of the relationship and the freak offs. So, as high profile as he is, and maybe without this testimony, his lawyers could potentially put up some sort of a fight to avoid having him testify because it is obviously burdensome and difficult at times. But I think it is absolutely relevant in this case. So we could definitely see him on the stand. I wouldn't be
Well,
surprised at all.
and the witness list is sealed, so we don't really know who's going to take the stand until it's announced at the end of the day. Oh, this person's going to be testifying tomorrow. That's kind of how we knew Capricorn Clark was going to testify today. And I'll just follow up another question for you, Cameron. This is from Sam K. Are there celebrities, like big name actors, going to testify?
I would think definitely. I think there's, this level of credibility that you have for a celebrity who has nothing to gain to come and testify. You saw that with Kate Moss in the Johnny Depp trial. And even Johnny Depp's attorney said Kate Moss has no reason to lie. She doesn't want to be here, right? So I think testimony from people like Kid Cudi, Usher, other celebrities where they really don't want to be there, and presumably are telling the truth because of that reason, are going to be really credible and impactful for the jury.
But for the prosecutor's point of view, you would also have to imagine, do they want it to get this far? Do they, they don't want to call like a J-Lo or a Justin Bieber, right, Cameron? Because then it just confuses what the case is about. It gets too, I think they're trying to be as specific as possible with who the victims are, who the escorts are, what the charges are. Because if you take every allegation against Sean Combs in the past 2 years from every civil lawsuit, putting aside the fact whether it's even relevant to the federal case, I don't think they want an expansive case like that.
Yes and no, and I think Safa could speak more intelligently about this, but usually prosecutors want to give as much evidence as possible and kind of almost beat a dead horse over and over, showing all the bad acts. They're presenting their case first, all that evidence comes in for the jury, and it's pretty impactful. So, I don't know if the prosecution, especially in this case, with the mountain of evidence that they have from the federal indictments and the raids, are going to say, okay, I think we have enough and let's not confuse the jury. I think the jury, when they have enough bad facts and enough credible witnesses, they'll figure out a way on one of the charges to get a conviction.
I'll throw that to you, Safa, if you have an opinion about it.
Yeah, I would agree with Cameron. But not only that, I always think, and this is more of a style approach, is when you're telling the truth isn't complicated. So I don't think that you need, a bunch of witnesses to repeatedly tell the same thing. You want to get in, you want to get out, and you want to give impactful testimony for the jury to take away and consider. Now, it would be beneficial for the government to have these very notable people testify to the same thing, and, the jurors are humans. They are going to be fascinated by some of the people that come to testify in the witness stand, especially if you do have an usher or jailer or somebody of that stature. But I don't think it's necessary with respect to the government's case. Not only that, I think with the domestic violence component, which essentially goes to show the threat of force and physical violence, I think we've heard quite a bit of testimony from Ms. Ventura herself, from Capricorn Clark, from Mr. Mascotti, and a bunch of other witnesses that would corroborate that. So I think the government's doing a pretty good job. They can certainly include some of these additional witnesses. I don't think it's actually necessary. But to Mr. Cameron's point, they're going to want to put as much as they can and throw the whole kitchen sink to get their conviction.
Saf, I want to follow up with another question. There's been a lot of talk about alleged victim number 3. Maybe can't find this person, not going to be able to testify. It was a big development leading into this trial. So we got a question from NLin93. And before I read this question, it presumes a lot and makes a lot of accusations. Just put it there. So NLin93 asks, is it okay, legal, for Diddy to pay off Gina to not testify? So assuming Gina is alleged victim number 3, and assuming that's what he did. And if so, will the prosecutors know before it's too late in this case? Safa?
That is 100% illegal. He cannot do that. That is witness tampering. That's bribery. He would be subject to new criminal charges if he were to do that. Could the government be informed that he did do this or allegedly do this prior to the end of trial? I'm sure, there's an interesting question as to why whoever victim number 3 is, why they didn't testify or why they have not testified as of yet, if they are still missing in action. And I do believe that victim 3 has an attorney. So it's interesting to see how their attorney is playing into this, because generally speaking, when us as defense attorneys, we have a client testify, we are in constant communication with that person. So the last thing I heard, which I'm not sure if it's true, was that the government had not heard from the witness or I believe it's her attorney, but we'll see. But that is illegal.
Yeah, and right. We have no evidence to suggest that's what Diddy has done or allegedly did, which, by the way, Cameron, goes to another question we have from Nicole RZV. In high-profile cases like this, is it possible for the defense team to pay some witnesses to refuse to take the stand or to testify falsely?
Yeah, no. This would be incredibly
It's possible.
stupid.
It's possible.
Yeah, yes, you're right. You're right. It is absolutely possible. It would be one of the stupidest things for any lawyer to ever do, or for either party. So let's.
The Infiniti QX60 is perfect for whichever version of me I need to be. Over to Aaron. The Bose audio system gets me ready for the stadium energy. Let's go. This spacious third row allows me to keep an eye on my son and get a little space to myself. Shh, over to Aaron. Second row heated seats, amazing.
Invest in an Infiniti without new tariffs during the Once in a Springtime event at your local Infiniti retailer.
Broken wheel conspiracy, where he's leading the charge, and everyone else is complying with everything he's doing, and they don't really have a choice. Whether they did have a choice or not is sort of actually irrelevant. But the point is that there's multiple people across states, across the country, helping him facilitate these illegal acts.
And Safa, let me follow that up. I mean, sure, there's different elements of it. There's different components. So it's racketeering, conspiracy. So the more the employees will say, we know what the job was. It was to serve his interest. It was to benefit him. It was to benefit what he wanted. That goes to this kind of agreement. But isn't it true they could convict him of racketeering conspiracy without all of the freak-offs, without all of the sex trafficking? Because some of the underlying crimes can be separate and apart from that. Kidnapping, arson, bribery, the drug offenses. If the jury goes, I don't know if Cassandra Ventura was sex trafficked, but I think that there was crimes afoot. I think that Sean Combs was a part of this criminal organization. I think he had all of his employees doing his bidding, and we actually believe that he committed crime X, Y, and Z. Am I right about that?
You're absolutely right, Jesse. And the government can do that. You know, the jury can come back not guilty with respect to the sex trafficking charges, but they can come back guilty on the RICO charges. So they have everything the jurors are going to consider everything that's been placed before them at the trial. With respect to the RICO charge, again, taking sex trafficking aside, you have these underlying offenses, which people have testified to. There has been evidence that's been brought in to make at least a showing that these things did occur. So even if the jury is not going to consider, I don't really think this was sex trafficking, I don't think Ms. Ventura is a victim with respect to sex trafficking, they can still consider the RICO charge in and of itself and the underlying predicate offenses that have been independently proven to make a finding of guilty.
By the way, in about 5 minutes or so, they're going to come back. Obviously, there's no cameras in the courtroom. There's no audio equipment in the courtroom. But we're going to get live reporting once again, once there's a continuation of testimony. And once there is, we will report in real time what that testimony is, and we will break it down for you in real time, as well as take your questions in this case. So Cameron, got a question for you. This is from Vanessa. Do you think the lack of vocal support from celebrities is very telling to the jury? Nobody's come to Diddy's aid and defend him. Well, in all fairness, it hasn't gone to his side yet. His case hasn't started yet. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they realize it's a really tricky situation and there's a lot of evidence against them. So their PR teams are pretty sophisticated, I would think, each celebrity, and they will say, absolutely do not touch this under any circumstance. Even if there is some support, that would not be a good idea. But it does also lend credence to the fact that some of these allegations are true, because if you had an overwhelming number of people saying, it wasn't, it would be hard for all these publicists and PR companies to be working, together to prevent that from getting out. I think the character and the conduct are coming to light.
We got a question here from Safa. Safa, did you put an own question from you to yourself? I hope you did. If not, we got another Safa here.
I did not.
Okay. Yeah, I think you did. But no, Safa, got a question from you from Safa. What are the accusations? Why are the accusations in the Lil Rod case not being discussed? It shows even more RICO. So just to provide a little context here, talking about Rodney Lil Rod Jones, one of the first people to file a lawsuit against Sean Combs, I believe in February 2024. His former producer made a ton of accusations that he was basically assaulted by Combs, harassed by Combs, that he was groomed into homosexual sex for Combs, said he was a witness to violence, that he was sex trafficked. He alleged violations of the RICO laws. But I remember leading up to this case, there was a filing where the defense had said that the government's not going to be calling producer one. I made it the point at the time, I think that's Lil Rod. Maybe, if that's the truth, is that because what? That his allegations might not be relevant or they might be weak?
They definitely could be irrelevant. They definitely could be weak. I'm not too familiar with the lawsuit, but what I will say is there's probably some truth to it, and probably some things that may not be completely true. And the government is going to be very careful about who they pick as their witnesses. They want individuals who have, they're credible witnesses. They usually don't like to call people to testify, and I don't know what Mr. Rod, his background is, but individuals who have a heavy background or heavy criminal history, they want to stay away from individuals like that. I don't know if that's his case. I think that because he filed a civil suit as well, that gives him a motive to testify in a particular way, which the defense can certainly attack if he's on the stand. Now, again, if some of the things taken are true, could they be relevant? Absolutely. But does the government need to use him as a witness? Would they truly benefit in having him testify? They may not, so they've probably stayed away from him.
Yeah, and look, he showed up the first week of court. I think day one he showed up outside of court, I think probably in a moment of solidarity. But yeah, no indication right now he's going to testify. So also, besides the questions that we have up, we also have a poll up. Keep putting these polls up during the course of the case. So on YouTube, we had a question. Do you believe the allegations of workplace abuse, unpaid overtime, threats against Combs? And get this, Cameron, 88% say yes, 12% say no. So when it comes to what the environment was like for these assistants, and we've heard a number of them so far. It seems the majority of people, at least on YouTube, believe him. We don't know what the jury believes, but that's quite telling, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to remember, jurors are usually employees. They're usually not employers. So they've either been part of an organization where maybe there was a hostile environment, or they've had bosses or employers who have treated them poorly. So they can commiserate. They can see when something's believable or not, and when multiple people are saying the same thing, we should believe them.
Great question from D Princess. It happened earlier today. There was a whole back and forth about DNA that might have been found on the car or in relation to the car, Kid Cudi's car being blown up. Again, if the jury accepts that, arson is one of the underlying crimes of racketeering. I'll throw it to you, Safa. This is a question from D Princess. The prosecutors don't seem to want the DNA results to the car being admitted into court. Why don't they think that is? This is about Kid Cudi's car. So just let me read you a little bit from the transcript, or a portion of the transcript from this morning. The judge said, I see you burned the midnight oil over the weekend. What about the DNA questions? Prosecutor says, Investigator Jimenez's knowledge of this is extremely limited. The judge says, but didn't he ask the serologist if any DNA test was done? Prosecutor says, but not the results. Prosecutor says, yes, there was a partial profile from the glass bottle in the car, but Investigator Jimenez does not know what that means. But and then the judge cut the prosecutor off. Cut the prosecutor off, saying, you don't object to the report coming in, only what Mr. Agnifilo will ask. That's one of Sean Combs' defense attorneys. Prosecutor says, we do object to the report coming in. Agnifilo responds, we got the results back, he got the results back. If the DNA came back with Sean Combs' DNA, this investigation would have gone in a different direction. But it was consistent with a female contributor. So then the judge followed up. So it's not whether the result was accurate, only the impact. And then the judge said, I'm going to overrule the objection, but I'll hear you at sidebar after the direct, There's a little bit more back and forth on that. So it seems to me, Safa, right, there might be evidence to suggest that Sean Combs' DNA either wasn't on the car, maybe not tying him to the arson, and maybe that's a problem for the prosecution. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely not going to look good for the prosecution. And in a perfect world, the prosecutors would love to have his DNA in that vehicle or on that Molotov cocktail. I don't think that kills their theory, though. There is testimony that we expect, or there's evidence that indicates that DNA evidence was that of a woman. What woman or who, we don't know at this point in time, depending on if they were able to figure out whose DNA that was. If that person so happened to work for Mr. Combs and was doing that or created that Molotov cocktail, put it in the vehicle at his direction, then that's a win for the government. But it's not the greatest position for the government that it was a female's DNA. They, of course, would love for it to be Mr. Combs, but that's just not the case here.
Again, if you go back to the idea of how RICO used to be prosecuted, and you're talking about a mafia organization, you're not going to see the Don's fingerprints on the gun at all times. I mean, that's the point. Got a question for you, Cameron. This is from Nest Dog. Do you think 50 Cent is going to testify?
I don't think so. I don't necessarily see the direct relevance there. I don't know how the prosecution can use him effectively or more effectively than some other celebrities. And he's sort of.
Well, we know they have a rivalry, and it came up, I think, a little bit during Capricorn Clark's testimony today, regarding like a rivalry between them.
Yeah, I don't know if that's enough. I think we talked earlier about kind of keeping the case a little tight. You do want evidence, and you do want as many credible witnesses as possible, but just on that minor point, I don't know if that's enough to bring in 50 Cent. It would, for my selfish reasons, I'd like the entertainment, though. I think it'd be kind of hilarious to have 50 Cent come in and then make his little meme posts about it.
The problem with him is he's been quite vocal about this case since it began.
Yeah, exactly. His credibility is not going to be great, and on cross, they're going to point that out pretty quickly.
I mean, he has not missed an opportunity to troll Diddy during the course of this whole case. We know there's bad blood between them. Let me throw a different question to you, Cameron. This is from Alexander Mateo. Will anyone testify on the alleged freak-offs at Diddy's parties? But like, there were people who testified about being part of the freak-offs, the escorts. I guess it's another celebrity question, right? Do you interpret that? Is that assuming that these freak-offs included people that weren't just the alleged victims and the alleged paid escorts? I guess other people who might have been a part of it.
Yeah, again, I don't think the prosecution needs it. I think it's pretty well documented. No one's denying it, even on Diddy's side, that there were these freak offs.
Upgrade to Grand Cherokee, just $99 a month at Faulkner in Mechanicsburg. Or get 0% financing for 72 months. Ram 1500 Bighorns are on sale too. Lease only $299 a month. Discounted up to 17% with Employee Pricing Plus now through May 31st. Hundreds of vehicles have thousands in savings. Get started at FaulknerCDJRF.com.
Jeeps and Rams cost less at Faulkner, to be sure.
Lady Lavu, isn't it too late about this Kid Cudi stuff? I mean, there is a statute of limitations to press charges.
Well, there is a statute of limitations, but one with respect to RICO, there's a broad net with respect to that, and we are within the statute of limitations for that. So maybe on the state side, arson charge for California statutory limitations, it may have expired. I'm not too familiar with the law over there, but it's fair game here in the RICO case.
By the way, they are officially back in court. So as we said, we're going to give you updates about what's happening and break it down in real time. There is a back and forth between the prosecutor and defense counsel. So the prosecutor says they propose to use communications between Miss Clark and Miss Ventura. We don't see any non-hearsay purpose. So I guess this is about how they're cross-examining Capricorn Clark, if I had to imagine. And the defense says, this is Mr. Agnifilo, there are logistics and photo shoots being discussed. She testified to this on direct. What are your takeaways from that back and forth? I know it's quite limited, Safa, but what should we be thinking about here?
What we're going to be thinking about is the impeachment of Capricorn Clark's credibility. So she's already testified. What the defense is going to get ready to do during the cross-examination is cross-examine her and elicit facts that are going to be beneficial to the defense. If there is something that she testified during direct examination that contradicts the defense's theory, or that the defense knows not to be true, then they will cross-examine her on that. And one of the things that I expect, based on what we've just discussed, is that they could use text messages between her and Ms. Ventura to do that, to impeach her credibility and essentially show that she has not exactly been truthful in her testimony, and also to get more information out of her. A lot of times when the prosecutors have these witnesses come on the stand, the prosecution wants them to tell their own story that's favorable to the prosecution. But the defense has a story too, and I think that's what they're about to prepare for.
Cameron, question from Rel. Has the government come to an agreement with co-defendants?
I don't think so quite yet. I think the main target here is Diddy, right? So I think they want to see